Hello everyone, I'm Daniel, and we're back with the final set of Core 2026 cards. It's the Mystic class. We've all Mystic cards. We've got a few more neutrals. Only one card that we're missing overall, but we actually know what it is. It's Overpower. Anyway, let's get into Dexter. Dexter is new. Dexter, of course, is not new to Arkham Files or the card game, but he's got a bunch of new stuff on his card. So stat line 5223. The old Dexter from Innsmouth had 5232. So bumping up that agility a bit. Doesn't matter. Not sure. Obviously, the rogue access that he has fits very nicely with some agility stuff, but base 3 isn't great to use all of those, use your agility instead of the other stat. Mostly also because he wants to do that with his willpower in the first place. So probably doesn't want to include things like Thieves' Kit or the Hammerless, but we'll see. Okay, the ability though. This is pretty cool. After you play an asset reaction, either return another non-story asset you control to your hand, so pick something up, put it back in your hand, or play a different asset by name from your hand, paying its cost once per round. That is really fun. So essentially, you have two options, right? You play something, you get to play another thing, kind of as if that had fast, essentially. Or you have something that ran out of uses. So you've got an empty gun, you have an empty spell, literally anything. I mean, this is going to combo a bit with that. What is it called? Prestidigitation from the rogue class. So it's kind of like double dipping that ability a bit. But the problem I had with the original Dexter was often that he couldn't use his ability all the time. He didn't have stuff in his hand to play, and you had to discard the thing in play in order to get that free play action out. This is still going to be a similar issue where you need to have another asset that you want to play from your hand, but now you actually have a way of picking things up on maybe every other round, right? You pick something up, and then the next round you need to play two things. I don't think there's enough stuff to play to do this every single round with the card pool we have in Core 2026, but the promise is there, I think. It reminds me a lot of his old Elder Sign that picked things up, so that was easier to replay them. So that seems really cool. Obviously, very thematic with the Magician. It's another take on that magic trick idea, and his signature, we'll see in a second, also helps with that. So, the other thing I'll say is that it reminds me a lot of Marion's ability. Marion Tavares had the ability to, after you play an event, you get to play a different event. Now, her ability also had draw card stapled to it, so that was stronger in a lot of ways, where Dexter needs to draw the cards on his own. So, the other thing is that you're paying the cost of that new asset. So it's going to cost you a lot of money to do this quite often. And that is why the old Dexter had the cost reduction built in. You discounted the new card by one. Uh, Now, we don't really have too many fast assets so far, because Marion's cool thing is that you place a fast event and you're basically spending no actions to play two things. Um, level 2 Sticky Fingers, I think that's the only one he has access to right now. But if we see some more fast assets in the future, this gets a lot better. But the cost is a real issue. Okay. The Elder Sign. You may return a non-story asset at your location to its owner's hand. Seems really interesting, right? That is not an effect we've ever seen happen where you get to affect someone else's board state by having them pick up something. That's wild. Um, I'm really curious as to what that's going to look like. Do you want to have other people pick up an empty tome or a gun or something? Maybe. Maybe they're like, no, I wasn't planning on picking that up. But it seems kind of fun, and it's an asset, right? So it could be a any item. It could be with damage or something or horror on it. Could be an ally that you don't really want in play anymore, uh, but might want it in play later. This whole thing reminds me of Calling in Favors I talked about on my channel a few weeks ago. This would be really sick to play Calling in Favors with this ability, huh? All right, let's move on to his SIGs. We've got For My Next Trick, which is his signature event spell trick. And you get to search your deck for a spell or item asset, the entire thing, search the whole thing, and play it, reducing its cost by 2. Okay, there's our economy. This doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity. All right, so imagine that you have a spell that deals damage. You get to play this to go pick it out of your deck because you couldn't find it yet, and you just play it. No attack of opportunity. Really good. This is a very, very good card. I think there's just one copy of this, so you have to find this, but you can think of it as a second copy of your best card that you haven't found yet. So that's really nice. Maybe it's a third copy, really. Now, the Necronomicon, his weakness is a big boy. Put the Necronomicon into play in your threat area. It cannot leave play except by the triggered ability below the action trigger. You cannot play assets or trigger abilities on other assets you control. Remember, this is a player card. You do control this. No one else can take this test for you. You have to do it for yourself. It's interesting that compared to old Dexter, it doesn't say anything about not being able to put into play assets, but I have a sneaking suspicion that templating is gone, that everything is just play, which I think is fine. When we saw that card that's like new sleight of hand last time, it said to play the card. You weren't putting it into play. So it doesn't circumvent additional costs. I think that's the whole reason to do this. So maybe that explains Laboratory Assistant as well, that the only way to get things into play is to play them. Okay. Anyway, you can't play assets or trigger abilities on other assets, so if you were planning on doing something else and this shows up, uh-oh, you better do this. Now, it's just a test. It's one action. If you succeed, you discard it. Great. If you fail, shuffle it back into your deck and take a horror. We'll talk about the horror again in a bit, but the fact that this might pop out again and remove a arcane slot asset already in play from play is kind of annoying. So taking a 5 will test, not impossible, right? But we've never really seen a test like that on a weakness. For Kate Winthrop in chapter 1, hers scaled, but it started at base 2, I think. This is, I mean, she was base 2 herself, so maybe it's similar, but you got to hold back a guts or something for this. Good weakness. I like it. Okay. So what things might you be filling with those arcane slots? The level 0 Cosmic Flame over on the left, we saw that before with the original article back in, oh my god, what was it, November? October? I don't know. That one we've seen, and I've tried out, and it's really good. So that one, it's got 3 charges. You fight using willpower. If you succeed, you can spend a charge to do extra damage, or not, right? So it's like a Wither plus Shriveling all in one. And then the downside was if you reveal a Skull token, remove a charge. If you can't, take a damage and discard this card. So a little bit of back and forth, like, do I want to put charges or leave the charges here in order to not lose the spell altogether? Generally, the extra damage is really important, so you're kind of just chewing through those 3 charges as soon as you can. When I played this with Parallel Gem, which granted doesn't exist in Chapter 2 card pool, there was a little bit of back and forth, like, do I recharge this, etc. Anyway, it was fine. Like, I think Shriveling as a baseline is better because it has the extra charges, but this is better for, I think, a solo play or 2-player where you need to just use a single point of damage sometimes. So it really solves that 3 health enemy problem. Speaking of, there's an upgraded one. This is the very last card we got. It's exciting. It is a level 5 card. We don't have too many of those in the box. It's just this one, and then I think it's just 2 others, a Seeker and Guardian card. And this one is extra charge. Okay, uses 4 charges. And you get +2 willpower. Okay, so Dexter's going at 7 without anything else in play. And deal +1 damage for this attack. Nothing about spending charges yet. You are just dealing 2 damage every time you fire this off. If you succeed, you may spend 1 charge to deal 1 damage to an enemy at your location. Hooray. Now you can do 3 damage to a single enemy by spending a charge. Or you can do 2 damage to the enemy you attacked and then 1 to something else. Maybe even an aloof enemy that just dies because you did 1 damage to it. That's really cool. Then the rest of it's the same as the level 0 version. If you reveal a Skull token during this test, remove a charge from Cosmic Flame. If you can't, take a damage and discard this card. Very strong. The big question is, how long does this last, right? 4 guaranteed extra pings of damage. Maybe not, right? Because if you reveal skulls, you start removing these charges sooner than you thought. So compare it to like the level 5 Azure Flame or Shriveling from Chapter 1. Those are more consistent, right? You know you're dealing 3 damage, but this is more versatile. Like you don't necessarily need to do 3 damage, in which case this can last for quite some time. Azure Flame and Shriveling had awful, awful blowbacks in the level 5 version. You took 2 horror or 2 damage for revealing a nasty token. This one's just on one token, a skull. And I kind of wonder if there's going to be more skulls in the chaos bags, make this scarier. Probably not. Usually we get 2, sometimes 3. I don't know if we've ever seen 4 in a single chaos bag. We have 4 tokens, but I don't know if we've ever gotten all 4 in a single campaign. Really, really strong card. This is a great way for Dexter to be just handling enemies. I can't get over that you don't spend any charges for the +2, +1 damage. We haven't seen anything like that before. I mean, we have with other kinds of cards, of course, like the melee weapons from way back when, but this is level 5, right? And takes up an arcane slot. I think it's going to be good. It reminds me of Blessed Blade a bit. Okay. Let's move on. Here's another thing you could put in your arcane slot. We just have a level 0 second sight. It's basically the same thing for investigation as we saw from Cosmic Flame. So we've got 4 costs, so it's a bit more expensive, 3 charges once again. And this time, the idea is that you spend a charge to get additional clue at your location. If you reveal a cultist token, which are kind of unusual, you don't always have them in the bag at all, then you have to remove a charge, and if you can't, take a horror and discard this card. Great card. Again, if you're in solo, you don't really need to spend the additional charge because most locations only have 1 clue. If you're in 2-player, well, now you can spend the charges to get your extra clue. That's fine. That's just like Rite of Seeking. And if you're in 3-player, you can kind of do both, right? Remember, you can still use this if the charges are all gone. So you're able to maybe get all of your extra clues, the 3 extra clues, and then leave this around, especially if you know you're never going to draw a cultist. And we'll come back to the token manipulation aspect of Mystic in a bit. Good card. And I like the balance here. It just feels like the original Mystic core set was very, very limited in terms of how it got clues, and including a spell here for getting clues right at level 0 is fantastic. And it's much easier to play around, I think, than the Rite of Seeking was, which I like that card. I like that card a lot. Okay, then we've got another way to get clues, and this is the Augur of Elakos, and this is a level 3 event, which is a bit bewildering at this point. You investigate using your intellect, but you add your willpower. So Dexter, this is just a +2 essentially. I should have mentioned that we don't have a level 5 second sight. Maybe we see this in Marie Lambeau's deck. Maybe not. Maybe the damage one is the only one we ever get for a while because it's much more important to me, maybe to get that extra bonus damage. But anyway, okay, back to this one. So if you succeed, you discover an additional clue at your location. So you're getting 1 event, 2 clues. But if you succeed and a token with a symbol was revealed during this test, so Elder Sign, Curse token, Skull token, whatever it might be, you may discard a Terror or Hex Treachery from any investigator's threat area. So if there's one even around and you get a symbol, this is quite good. It's wrapping Alter Fate sort of into Read the Signs, and maybe that's worth your 3 XP. My sense is this is 3 XP to keep it from being accessible by investigators who get level 2 Mystic. Otherwise, it feels a bit overcosted, but we've said that before in this series, that the level 3 cards are a bit much for what we're used to getting. On the other hand, that level 5 spell we just saw, the upgraded Cosmic Flame, is a great usage of your XP. So, I don't know. It's just awkward, right? Like, the Terror or Hex has to be in someone's threat area. It can't be somewhere else. Can't be attached to a location or something. You have to make sure you hit the symbol. Like, otherwise, all you're doing is you're paying 3 XP and 2 resources and this card for 2 clues, which you could have gotten with the second site anyway. Yeah, for redundancy, I guess it's fine, but it's not what I'm going to immediately upgrade into in Dexter. So maybe it's a plant for someone else, for a different investigator who cares about maybe spell events. Maybe Marie cares about spell events. So here's a good one for you to use. So, not everything in the core needs to be for the core investigators. Let's keep going. More ways to get clues. Will of the Cosmos. I'm super excited about this card. This is our replacement for Drawn to the Flame from the original core, which got you 2 clues at your location in exchange for a random encounter card. This one just says place a doom on a player card you control, then discover 1 clue at your location and another clue at a different revealed location. Nice for solo, right? Because often clues are coming one at a time. You can have this in your hand and then you walk away from a location that's high shroud, and then you play this, get your clue from this location and then the one back there. You've maybe gained yourself a victory point for that whole process. Is the doom worth it? Yes. There's 2 things to think about. One is that sometimes the doom doesn't matter because either you're just about to finish the scenario or you're in the witching hour and the doom does not do anything, right? The agenda would have advanced anyways. The doom won't stick around. It'll go away on its own. The other thing is Dexter and maybe some other shenanigans you can go to can remove player cards from play. So you put the doom on something that you then immediately return to your hand with his ability or other things we've seen. For Izzy, we saw Jumpsuit. Jumpsuit just lets you, as a free trigger, remove things itself from play. You put the doom here, and that just goes away, as there's like no cost. The Drawn to the Flame uh, blowback was a random encounter card, and you could not cheese that at all. There was the only thing you could do is cancel it with ward protection, which is right here too. But it could have been an enemy, so that really was a random effect. Placing a doom is something you can control. Love the art here, by the way. The art has been stellar in these Mystic cards. Wards here. The only reason to bring up Ward additionally is that it lets you take horror, and sometimes you want that. Why might you want that? Well, we have Jim Culver. Jim Culver is back as an ally. He is not an investigator anymore. He's been turned into a really good ally. I'm of 2 minds of this. So obviously, if you're playing Legacy, you can't play Jim with Jim. Fine. But just sort of to like point towards the future, I don't think it means that we'll never see Jim again. As an investigator, I think they can do this, right? They've done it before with Red Glove Man in a campaign where they said you can't play the asset, you can't play the player card Red Glove Man. You just can't do that in this campaign. Oh well. Andre Patel, we know he's a story asset from the most recent standalone Film Fatale, and he's coming back as an investigator. So it's not unprecedented, and I'm fine with it. It's interesting that Jim is the only one of the core set main allies, the ones that give you +1 to your main stat. That is an old investigator. So, I mean, it would be interesting. I've read people say, well, what if all 4 of them were that way? What if they wanted to repurpose old investigators that they no longer wanted to show up in this second chapter for now? That would have been kind of cool. But, Logan and Dorothy and Alexi are neat too. And Olivier, of course. But for me, it also kind of represents that Jim was an investigator that I think was much maligned because they didn't really know how to deal with him. He kind of showed up in Dunwich and didn't get much support. He started to get a little more support for trying to draw skulls, like with Olive McBride later, and I think he ended up being fine. He wasn't like great, but there were a few things that were interesting about his ability, and they never really pushed that any further. They never really said, but why would you want to draw skulls? The best they ever did was Song of the Dead, and it wasn't good. So once they started doing other things that with token manipulation, they never really came back to like Jim. And I think they could have tried to save him, but I think with the Chapter 2 break, it doesn't really make sense to continue to print cards for Jim himself. So the fact that now he exists as a ally is cool. His ability has nothing to do with skulls anymore, which is fine. I don't think it really matters. But his ability is great. After you take damage or horror, exhaust him, draw a card. Compare this to the old Arcane Initiate, which was the only ally we got in the original core set. That one was cheaper. Jim here cost 4. It's not cheap at all. And she didn't give you plus willpower at all. She came in with a Doom, but she gave you a lot of card draw too, provided you had spells. Jim doesn't care what you do. You just draw cards. And taking damage or horror is going to happen quite a bit, I think. You're going to do it on purpose for Izzy. You're going to do it probably often enough for Dexter just to get the card draw going. 2/2 Soak is incredible. That's better than the other allies we saw before. I don't think he's broken or anything. It's a very simple ability, but I don't mind that these allies that we get are just really good because the ally slot is very important, and starting with some actually powerful allies that cost a lot. Okay, I want to repeat that. 4 cost is a big commitment, but they've essentially moved that +1 willpower from other things like Holy Rosary to the ally slot itself. So it is not easy to play all your allies, but you kind of want to. You kind of want to have these guys in play. So he's going to be really good, and it's a big surprise to see him, but I think that's fine. The designers can do that. That's fine. Okay. We do have token manipulation. This is kind of a somewhat of a reprint of Grotesque Statue. There's a few mechanical differences here, but the biggest thing is that it takes up the head slot, headgear, headwear, whatever it is. It's a mask. And that's probably where the old masks are going to live. Maybe they errata those. I have no idea. But this sort of effect is going to go in this new slot now. So 3 costs, which is not cheap either, and 3 charges. When you would reveal a chaos token, spend a charge, you get an additional token. Choose one of those to resolve and ignore the other. If the one you actually wanted was a symbol token, take 1 horror. So far, that's not the case, right? We're kind of avoiding symbols right now. Probably that will change in the future. But everything we've seen, I think, in the core says don't resolve tokens with symbols. Now, maybe you want to because you'd like to take the horror, put it somewhere, draw a card with Jim. Where is that somewhere you might put it? Well, it could be on this Cloak of Resonance that we saw before, and then you get to deal damage to an enemy at your location. This has been out for a while too. It's a solid card. It is, I think, quite expensive when I've tried playing with it, but it feels really good when you play your ward, you use your mask to just ping damage onto enemies. It's the old Agnes ability, but you can do it 3 times. But maybe you can do it some more times. Check out this Lucky Charm over here on the left. 4 charges, spend a charge, and exhaust Lucky Charm. Move a damage or horror from a card at your location to a card you control. Okay, quick rules update here. Not update, this has always been part of the rules, but just a reminder that moving damage or horror does not count as you taking damage or horror. So moving it will not proc Jim's ability. However, the cloak says when horror is placed on it, then you deal the damage. That's fine. So you can move a horror from your Lucky Charm over to the cloak, and now you deal some more damage. Or maybe you move the horror off of the cloak and then put more horror onto it later. Up to you, right? We saw Survivor stuff where you could heal damage or horror, right, Alexi? This seems good. I think both of these are very good cards. They're just not cheap. If Dexter's going to remove any of these from play and then put them back into play, you gotta find out some resource generation because we don't really have it here. Maybe Dexter needs to play that awful Paint the Town Red card just to get some more resource generation. We have some skills. We have Soul Link, 3 wild icons as additional cost to commit it, take a horror. And where are you going to put that horror? You get to choose what you want to do. Maybe draw a card, ping an enemy for your for your trouble. This to me is a healthy version of Promise of Power. That one had 4 icons and added a curse. And most people, they played it in isolation. The curse didn't matter. It'll come back to bite them sometimes, but really what you want to do is pass the test that you're trying to pass. So 4 wild icons is a lot. 3 is less, just basic math there. But it's more than the unexpected courage. So I think it's worth it to take that horror sometimes, especially if you can take advantage of it. But I think even if you can't, and the test is important, you do this. Very good card, and the art there is also incredible. And then we have level 2 Fearless. This is a reprint from Dunwich Legacy. This seems like it's made for dealing with all the horror we just talked about taking. And remember, way back when, Izzy Barnes, her ability is to take direct horror and recur skill cards. Any skill card, even this one. So you can basically make her ability last even longer by including this in your deck. I don't know why you wouldn't. We have no other way of healing the horror from investigator cards yet. Although I imagine when Carolyn Fern comes out, we'll have some other ways. Good card. It's always been a good card. It's just makes more sense when you have the context of this core set. So I'm impressed with the Mystic set so far, just because there is a cohesive deck here. All of these things make sense for Izzy in particular, and Dexter is fine with these things too. We're just missing some resource generation, which might be like okay, right? Maybe lack of resource generation is part of the reset color pie, where look, Mystics do a lot of really good stuff, but what they don't do is be consistent about putting it all into play. And from like the perspective of Legacy and having played everything in Chapter 1, every class can kind of do everything, and there's always like a card that makes sense in your build. So it sort of at this point feels like Legacy is so, I don't want to say easy, but it's so geared towards anything you want to do, you can do it, right? And every class does very similar things, and they'll have a solution for your problem. So maybe it's on purpose to not give Mystics some of the resource generation, because as soon as they do, then like why not play Mystic, right? What's the downside to playing Mystic right now? I feel like in Legacy, there's no downside to playing any of the classes. Like they can do it all. The color pie though, I think is important. Anyway, Premonition's a reprint. Yep. This could be another place to put your Doom from the Doom card. Manual Dexterity is a reprint. That's the difference is the Performing Investigator draws a card. We have new art. That's Winifred, I suppose, with her plane. Haven't ever seen her before without her helmet. And we have reprints of Charisma and Relic Hunter. Really, really important. I know that some people were hoping not to see these in the core just because they're so powerful. It's really easy to put them into a deck and just make your deck better because it's a permanent card. I think Charisma especially people are nervous about because like you could take a lot more damage because you can put these powerful allies into play. But with the cost of those allies so far, I think it's hard to do. Charisma can be a bit of a trap for some players because if you don't end up playing all of your allies, or 2 of them or something, then you spent 3 XP for nothing. And that sometimes happens in a scenario where you kind of go overboard on that and you don't actually need all of it. But I also understand like the rotating allies idea kind of dies when charisma is in play. Like you don't need to do that anymore. It's not an alternative to how you use the ally slot. But again, I think part of that is going to go into if the unique allies, the named allies, are powerful but also expensive, then charisma allows you to play the other allies, right? You don't want to just have your laboratory assistant be sitting in your hand because you didn't want to get rid of Olivier, right? So charisma being here, I think, is important also for story allies, which I suppose they could just remove the ally slot from those guys, but that doesn't feel right. So Okay. Relic Hunter left less to say about right now because all we have are the Lucky Charm and the Lucky Cigarette Case. That's it. So once we see other accessories, this will get better, but it needs to be in the core. We also have some more weaknesses. Overzealous is a reprint from Carcosa. It's an incredible, incredible weakness. I really like it. The best part about Overzealous, if you haven't heard this take before, is that it doesn't do anything unique to your investigator deck, but rather makes the scenario play a little bit further. So if your scenario is going to dump a few more enemies on you, like that's a big problem potentially. Whereas other weaknesses, you can start to tech around them, or maybe they just keep you from playing your particular deck because paranoia, which is reprinted here too. If you're intending on playing a big money deck, oops, like you need to change your idea. Overzealous, there's nothing you can do about this. It's just it happens. Who knows what you'll get? But I think that's really fun. Amnesia is it's okay. I don't mind this one so much. It'll get awkward, I think, in this set too, because there's not a whole lot of fast things, and there's not a lot of. I mean, there's a decent amount of card draw, but um, like getting stuff into play, playing everything before Amnesia hits is harder than before, and building things back up, I think, is okay. It's fine. Paranoia, lose all your resources. If it's an upkeep, you still get one, which is fine. They templated this, by the way. It used to say discard, which doesn't mean anything in the game anymore. Discarding your resources was an old way that they talked about losing resources. And then this new one, Pursued, double action discard. Put this into play in your threat area after an enemy enters, which means moves into or spawns at your location, take a horror. We saw a couple other weaknesses before that something happens, take a damage. So I had hypothesized at the time that we're going to get one that deals you horror. The weird part is we only have one. We have two take a damage. There's one take a horror. Then there's the gold bug, which is just totally different. Okay. This card itself, it's a terror, so you can get rid of it with that Augur of Elikos, by the way, which is not usual. Like, you usually can't get rid of weaknesses, but you can here. That's cool. But the stars have to align a bit. The actual effect here is interesting because you could use this for good if you're a mystic, if you have the cloak. But most of the time, you just want to get rid of it. Not much more to say about that. Okay, I think that's everything. I think that's everything we've seen. Only Overpower has not been previewed. So we know what the whole box looks like in terms of the player cards, and that is wild to me. I think it's really good. If you compare it to the first core, where you only had one copy of everything, this is obviously way better. Compared to the revised core, we have fewer cards because that one allowed for 2 more level 1+ cards in the box for every class. We don't have Bulletproof Vest or Elder Sign Amulet. Instead, we have the Fedora. I guess it's interesting for Dexter, maybe. Kind of. But overall, I think it's a very coherent deck. My criticisms remain about the rogue class, which feels a little awkward still. I think Trish is very good. And ultimately she'll be fine, but I felt like there was just too much of the same thing in Rogue without good enough payoffs. Dexter looks really good. The Mystic cards are fantastic. I think they're all well designed. We're going to see what that level 5 card is really like, though. But in terms of like, here's a deck that you can play and probably do very well, whatever the scenario wants you to do, that's really good. We didn't get an evade spell for him. I guess you're supposed to use, manual dexterity, Olivier maybe, to evade, but let's not worry about that too much. And then Joe, I think, is my other criticism, where it's a lot of card draw with not much payoff outside of drawing the Guardian cards and using them to fight. Everyone else looks great. Izzy, probably a favorite of the designers too, because everything seems to help her do whatever she wants, which is great. It'll be really fun to play Izzy. Danielle looks really good too. So this is a way more coherent box for the investigators, and I think as a core set too to build on. But at the same time, I know that the designers are using these starter decks as like a core extension. I think the core needs to stand on its own as its own set, and I think it does. I don't think there's any glaring problems here that the starter decks are going to, sorry, the Evergreen Investigator decks are going to solve. So this is good. It's all good. The other news this past week or two has been on the campaign side, and I don't have a whole lot to say about that right now. There's some changes there, and I wonder if we'll have some ramifications on the player card design too, based on the length of campaigns. But so far, I don't know. I don't think so from what we've seen. So I think that's it for me today. I'm excited to play with this stuff. It looks really good. Looks really fun. And I'm right now I'm definitely just to try out the core as the core and maybe with the starter decks too. And not mixing in legacy stuff. So I've been just evaluating all this based on these are the only cards you ever have in playing the core set campaign. And I want to do that just to see what that's like. Cool. Thanks for watching, and I don't know what the next video in this series we like. We'll be starting the previews of the Evergreen starter deck sometime soon, but for now, see you later.